welcome back to the channel. My name is Adam Smith, and inside this game overview and gameplay video, I have set up on the table for you Survive Alive. This one coming from Snarf Games, and I've recently done an unboxing on the channel as well, so if you actually want to check that unboxing out to see all the prototype components. Again, this is a prototype, so everything you see here is going to be subject to change and will change throughout the course of development. This one is going to crowdfunding in the future. It'll be landing on GameFound, so if you want to find the exact date as well as a link to the campaign page, I will have it in the video description, pinned comment, and it will show up on screen in the top right now. So what is Survive Alive? Well, it's a medium-weight strategy-based draw and write game set in a post-apocalyptic world. So, as you can see with the components laid out on the table, which I will be going through one at a time first, and then we'll dive into win-loss conditions and, of course, gameplay, you will see this in action to help you make an informed decision as to whether or not this is for you. Before we begin, let's find out a bit more about the backstory of Survive Alive. As one of the few survivors, you will build a base, obtain resources by scavenging the community map, and the map is what you're currently looking at right now. You'll be protecting your group using weapons and building defenses and constructing facilities to make life a little more tolerable. Now, while trying to accomplish all this at your base, at the end of each round, hordes of Zeds will be looking for your flesh, and if you can't beat them, you might be joining them. If you can survive the Zeds and gain the most influence points at the end of the 6 rounds, you will be the victor of Survive Alive. So as I just mentioned, the aim is to try and get through 6 rounds alive, and then we're going to tally up our influence points. Those influence points will be tracked across a number of different tracks in the game. Here's a chunk of them right here on the left-hand side of our board. We'll be building out our base. And it's also worth mentioning, as I said at the beginning of the video, that there will be even more solo-specific scenarios, which I will touch on and talk about as we get further into the video. Those ones will add special objectives in. The scenarios will be more tailored to our narrative experience. So that's going to add even more to the experience at the end of the day. So the aim of this solo playthrough is going to be to show you the game mechanisms so you get a good understanding of how things flow and operate and how you can build your base up over a series of rounds and try to survive the Zeds making their attack on you and trying to do everything they can to stop you. It's now time to go around the game board, find out more about what each of these components do. So first off here, we have the resource cubes. There are 50 brown, 35 gray, 20 yellow, 20 red, 14 green, 14 white, and 8 black. The brown cubes are wood, the gray ones are metal, red is for brick, yellow is for food, the bluish teal color is for herbs, white is for cloth, and the black one is wild. For now, all the cubes go back inside the drawstring bag. We will be pulling some of them out as we get into the final steps of setup. We'll continue on into the cards here in the middle. The first deck at the very top has the bloody hand on it. This is the event card deck. We simply shuffle these cards and place them face down. The next deck is the character deck. For now, I've shuffled it and placed it here. I've already selected my characters. We'll talk more about how that selection process happens in a second. The final set of cards are objective cards. This mini card deck right here, I've already thinned it out. Any of the A and B objectives come out. You'll see the A and B in the bottom left-hand corner. So I've removed all of those out of the equation. You should only have C objectives in here when playing solo. Once you have the solo-specific objectives, shuffle them without looking and place one randomly face up in front of you. In this case, I have end objective, reach the 4th box on the defense, health, and morale tracks. We'll talk more about this later on. Next up, we have the community map. You're going to see right in the center of this map, the forest base, mountain base, quarry base, and river base. Now, I've already selected my base down below, and you'll see it in a second. It has an icon for a forest. So that means either way, whichever one you choose, you reside in the center area here. So this community map represents all the areas you can potentially go out to scavenge, but you can only go to certain areas dependent on the player count. So for me, playing solo, you'll see 1 to 2. This bordered line, the dotted yellow one that turns into red right here, is going to divide things out, so I'll only be able to explore up into this area of the map. These bottom 2 sections only expand out when you get to 3-player count and 4-player count. So when playing solo, simply scribble these areas out as you won't be able to interact inside of them. In the top left of the community map, you're going to find 2 rows. One is for the round and the other is for the event, and it's going to tie together. So as you go through the 6 rounds you're trying to survive through, underneath of it, it'll let you know exactly how many event cards you're pulling each round. And over here on the right-hand side of the equation really all ties to scavenging. And that's primarily what this community map is going to be used for, is when you're actually moving in and out of different areas trying to scavenge for things. Depending on how much food you spend, you can scavenge certain locations. And of course, those locations will have varying threat levels and varying outcomes depending on which one you go to. And again, you can see based on which locations are on the community map, how much food is necessary to get there. In the top right-hand corner, we have some wound tokens. These are inside of a game tray. The game tray is not part of the prototype or part of the final version whatsoever, just using it to keep things organized. But essentially, wound markers can go on characters, of course. As the Zeds try to push through, they're going to try and injure characters that are in their way. So if a character happens to get a wound token, the first time the player is unable to gain a health mark. What that means is a health mark means if your individuals are successful at not being bitten or injured, you get a health mark. But if you were wounded, you're not going to get one. You'll see more about that on the track later on down near the base sheet. If you have 2 wound tokens on a character, the character's unable to use their ability until the second wound token is removed. So you're really capping that character with that second wound. If you get the third wound, the character just straight up dies. And below that, we have the first player marker, which of course, when you're playing solo, doesn't really need to be used because you're not passing this thing around. If you're playing with other players, you would be moving this as the rounds go on. But in this case, we just put it to the one side and leave it there. We've now reached the character cards. These are the ones I'll be using during gameplay. I've already gone through the selection process to get to these two, Piercy and Buzz. Now, how do we get there? Well, in solo mode, you're going to go ahead and draw 5 cards, 5 character cards from that deck that's sitting to the left of the community map I showed you prior. You select one of the 5 characters available, then you're going to shuffle the rest and draw one at random to discard to the bottom of the character card deck. Then you get to choose another character card from the last 3 cards remaining, and then you proceed on with your setup, which is really going to tie in the cubes coming out of the bag based on the characters that you have selected. Now you're also going to see here the abilities of each of the characters, and every character will have a different ability, and they're all very handy in different ways. But as I mentioned just moments ago when we were talking about wounds, once you get 2 wounds on a character, that ability no longer applies. Piercy, being a police officer, adds a shield to the base when defending. Should come in really handy against those Zeds. Now Buzz here, the electrician, when building a radio or a command center, is going to cost 1 less metal. Once you know your 2 characters, you can write their names in right here and here. That's all we're going to do with the base sheet right now. We're definitely going to come back to this because a lot of strategy goes into this base sheet depending on how you want to build things out. And there's tracks along the left-hand side to keep track of how well we're doing. As we progress through the round, you'll see how that all operates. Now, the game also includes player shields for when you're playing with multiple players around the game table. But when you're playing solo, you do not need this shield. However, there is really handy summarized information right on the back side, so it's actually not a bad idea to keep this thing nearby as a great reference of some of the icons and different things you have to pass through as you go through the round. We're on the doorstep, ready to get into gameplay. The last thing we need to do is take a look at each of the characters that we have here, and we're going to collect the cubes based on the quantities for each of the colors listed on the right-hand side of both cards. All the resources have been gathered for both of the characters. We're going to pool these all together. They sit next to the base sheet. Now, getting back to what I mentioned prior in terms of which base sheet I picked the forest one. You can see the forest icon right on it. If I picked the quarry or the mountain or the river, the icon, of course, would change. So without further ado, let's dive right into gameplay. We have 6 rounds to try and survive through. The very first thing we do at the start of a round is to spend resource cubes. We have a whole bunch of resource cubes we just gained. Let's try to find an effective way to use them. Let's turn our attention to the base itself, so ignore all the white boxes and everything going on over here. We're going to go ahead and ignore anything on the character road down along the bottom. The only thing we care about is anything that has barricades here, which is the barbed wire on the outside of the base, and anything on the inside. That's what we're focused on right now. You'll see a ton of different squares. Now, all of these have icons representing exactly what can be built there. It also shows their resource cost in terms of which resource cubes need to be spent in order to create said facility, or potentially a barricade, or even watchtowers. Watchtowers sit in all 4 corners of the base, and they actually provide a really cool ability in that they cover 2 sides of the base when they're built. So this one here will provide 2 shields to the north and 2 shields to the west, whereas just going ahead and building a single barricade one at a time is only going to give you 1 shield towards your defense for the actual direction that that particular barricade is on. So we could, if we wanted to, right now start building some barricades on the south side. If we really thought that the south one was going to get pulled in the next event card, it would cost us the 1 steel and the 1 wood to go ahead and create one, and we could make a few of them and hope that that's the side the Zeds are coming on, or we could be a bit more smart and use one of the 4 watchtowers. Now, the thing to remember is you got to survive 6 rounds. The watchtowers are only 4 of them, but they provide a really cool ability when you build them. When you build them, you get the ability to take a look at the event cards in advance that are coming at you, meaning you'll know exactly how many and which direction they're coming at you from, which means at best, you're going to be able to know this 4 rounds out of the 6, but 2 of the rounds at the minimum, you're going to be completely blind and they're going to come at you. And if your defenses aren't up, bad things are going to happen. So when I'm starting the game out with absolutely no defenses in the first place, it's a really good idea to probably build yourself a watchtower to get an idea as to where they're coming so you can min-max the spending of your resource cubes. So we're going to go ahead and do exactly that. Let's go ahead and build the one up here. And again, we could choose this one here because both of these are relatively cheap for resource cost. But remember, we can either choose to do this expensive watchtower now while we have a bunch of resources, or the cheaper ones. That's kind of a trade-off you have to decide on. And of course, you're kind of guessing as to whether or not that watchtower's defense, being that it will give you 2 shields on 2 sides, will actually line up with the card that's going to come off the top of the event deck when we get a peek. So I'm going to go here and we'll see what happens. So we're spending a brown, a gray, and a red. Now, as exciting as that move is, I'm actually kind of eyeing something else, and I think would actually be really beneficial going forward, and that is the ability to build a workshop. A workshop's a really cool one. It's this one right here, and you'll see above it, it says -1 gray, which would be steel, -1 brown, which is wood, or -1 red, which is brick. That can be extremely beneficial, and basically when you build yourself a workshop, you're going to take one of each of those color cubes, and you're going to randomly drop one of them through your fist down to the table. Whichever one lands is going to be a permanent discount you're going to get of -1 towards every facility you build going forward. That discount does not apply to barricades at all, so you're not going to be able to take advantage of that. Okay, the first one that hit was the red, so we're going to go with that because it was an accidental drop on the second one, but that is going to be the one that we're going to be discounted, so we're going to go ahead and just mark that above the workshop. So we know our discount now, and I'm going to go ahead and pretend like I went ahead and built that workshop first. If I did so, the -1 would have actually applied to this watchtower. Now, I'm not concerned about retroactively taking this back because one of each of those cubes is represented here. So it didn't matter which one came out, I would have gotten one back regardless. I simply wanted to focus on the perimeter as the explanation first, and then show you how a discount can be beneficial. So sometimes that workshop right at the gates is really nice. So we're going to take one, not black, we're going to take a red and bring it back to our reserve. So we're going to say we built the workshop first, and then we went and built this second, and it only cost 1 brown and 1 gray to build because we had that discount. We'll resolve the watchtower effect, which is take a look at the round we're in. How many event cards are we drawing? 1. So we're going to take a look at the top card. Again, we're not resolving it right now. We're just getting a sneak peek at what's to come in the future. So we flip this over. It is going to be an attack of the Zeds from the east, and it's going to be 4 plus the round numbers. The round number is currently 1, so 5 Zeds will be coming at us from the east. The rest down here does not matter. We don't have to worry about this whatsoever. It's more about replenishing our resource queues. We'll talk more about that later on. But this is the important piece, and this tells us how much of a defensive value we need to get to or exceed to stop anything from coming through from the Zeds. So unfortunately, where we built the watchtower was not going to be the side that's actually going to be beneficial for getting ourselves some defense. As of right now, this watchtower we built gives us 2 to the north and 2 to the west, but the Zeds are coming from the east, unfortunately. Now, just before I go ahead and spend some more resource cubes, it's worth mentioning here, you'll notice one of these is shadowed in from the very beginning. That is a storage unit. It allows you to store an unused cube on this space when this spending of resources section of the round is over. So it allows you to carry over a cube, maybe something rare that's tougher to find inside the bag. Again, there's varying amounts of each of these different resources. And of course, we can build more of those storage facilities along the way here to keep even more cubes going forward. The next row has some really specialized stuff going on here. We have things like a forge, we have the command center, we have a radio, all of these providing different benefits. Of course, we have these right here, which are all going to have to do with doing some healing at the medical rooms. We have a bed, we have bath and shower options, and of course, this is really going to tie into morale. Now, at the end of every round, if you want to get your morale going, and we do, because based on our objective, and this is going to tie us back to kind of what we're trying to accomplish here, the end objective for us is to reach the 4th box on the defense, health, and morale track. So how do we do this? Let's go through each of these rows one at a time because they all tie into final scoring and our end objective as well. So right at the very top, we have characters, and this is going to be points for how many characters that a player has alive at the end of the game. The one below is going to be the number of base breaches. So negative points for how many times a player's base has been breached by the Zeds. We don't want that to happen. The next one is going to be defending a base. You get points for how many times a player's base has been defended. So to defend a base, we now know based on building a watchtower tower that from the east, we're going to have 5 Zeds. So long as we have 5 defense or more, we're going to be able to shade in that very first 0 space, and we're well on our way for the defensive one, which is one of the things we need to do for our objective. We need to get to the 4th box on the defense. In other words, you need to defend 4 times in order to get these additional points off this end objective. But that's not all, there is more. We need to also get 4th position on the health track, and the health track is right here, and this is going to be points for how many times a player has kept their community healthy. So as long as your characters do not have any wounds on them, you're going to get yourself a point on this track. Next up, going down the row, is scavenging. So again, if you decide to send an individual into the community map and outside your base to scavenge, you get additional points for pushing them out into the dangerous world to come back with hopefully something beneficial. And from those scavenging adventures, you could potentially get some influence points, and you'll note those influence points right here on the next row. And the next one is very important because it's important to us. We already talked about defense, we already talked about health in terms of this one here and this one here reaching the 4th positions. But if we get our morale track to the 4th position, and that one can be a bit tricky, then we gone ahead and successfully done our end objective and we gain some additional points. Now, morale is very tricky. You need to keep every single character that you currently have in your base. So I currently have 2. You need to make sure they have a place to sleep, they have a shower, and they also have food. And you have to have that for each character. So if at least one character is missing one of the requirements I just mentioned, washing, sleeping, or food, you do not get to add the mark to the morale tracker. So in order to keep that morale going upwards, everybody's got to have all their needs met. And we'll talk more about this when we get to round end so you can see it in action, but actually as you work towards trying to get everybody being able to have their own ability to wash, to sleep, and to have food, the fun part is on your journey towards that, you're going to be losing resources because the morale isn't at that standard. And as I mentioned, we'll talk more about the specifics at round end when it actually matters. Now, moving on down through the rows, we got to the resource one here. You can have resource cubes at the end of the game, 1 point per resource cube gained, stored during the final round. Then you have objectives that can potentially give you additional points, and all of these total up to the final score. So take a look across the top of the row here for the base. For these 4 columns right here, you'll see they're all exactly the same. You've got the shower here, which again, each character needs 1 to get towards that perfect morale. You're going to need a bed for each character, and that's going to push them towards that perfect morale. This right here is going to allow you to start being able to gain herbs. In other words, you're going to create a herb garden that's going to actually provide that color cube on the very end every single round, which can become very beneficial. And the same goes for the food garden over here, where you can start building a food garden in every single round. You get the creation of food. Again, food tied to morale, good thing to have generating. That's the high-level gist of the base, and there's more intricacies within each of these things in terms of how they actually operate, but we'll get into them as we build them out. And of course, down below here, we even have the ability to spend resources in order to actually add and armor up our characters. So, Piercy, for instance, adds a shield to the base when he's defending. So, if he's defending, he's able to just provide a shield wherever he wants to, which is pretty awesome. Now, we can actually make Piercy even stronger by using resources to give him an axe, for example, which will give him 2 additional shields, or we can actually give him a knife and an axe, giving him 4. So you can actually have multiple weapons on your individuals. So we have 5 Zeds coming from the east. We could potentially build a watchtower, a cheap one over here that would give us 2 shields, but then we wouldn't get the effect, the cool ability to look at the event deck and get any new information. So that's kind of a waste. We can also just build 5 individual barricades. That would actually do it, but that would be a lot of resources burnt. I could actually do it though. Or we could spend a little bit of a mixture of building some barricades and maybe get Piercy armed up with some actual weapons. So by spending 2 metal and 3 wood, I'm able to build myself an axe and a knife for Piercy. And again, I do not get the discount from the workshop because that is not considered a facility. That is just a weapon. So placing those weapons on Piercy is going to bring his defensive total to 4, plus the 1 he gets when he's defending a base, which means if we just put Piercy on the east side, he's going to take care of all the Zeds that are coming. And this is why the Watchtower is so cool, because you get an idea as to what's coming, and now that we've got things... And this is why the Watchtower ability is so cool, because now that we know what's coming, we can now focus on using the rest of the resources to actually build out some of the center core things we really want to try and benefit from. So I'm going to go ahead and actually use an ability off of another character here just off screen. This one's going to be from Buzz. Buzz says, building a radio and or a command center costs 1 less metal. Well, how much does the radio cost? 3 metal. So I'm going to go ahead for 2, which is all I've got left, and we're going to build the radio. Now, what's really cool about the radio or the command center is both of them actually provide a better trade ratio. And I haven't talked about this yet, but beyond just looking at the actual color cubes for what they are color-wise, if you get into a situation where you don't have enough of a particular resource, you can exchange at any time a trade of 4-to-1. However, if you build the radio facility or the command center facility, you get a discount on that trade. So instead of it being 4-to-1, the radio makes it 3-to-1, and even better, if you build a command center, it's 2-to-1. So you might be wondering, well, why didn't you go ahead and build the command center? Well, because the radio has a cool ability. At the end of every round, you gain 3 extra additional resources from the bag, which can be very beneficial. The command center does not give you additional resources like the radio does, but it does give you the ability to gain a character on an event card at the end of the round. I'm going to spend some wood and some food in order to create a food garden. Next, I'm going to spend some wood and cloth in order to make a bed. I'm going to go ahead and build a shower. I'm going to need a red cube, a gray one, and a brown one. I don't have any gray, so I'm using 3 here in order to make that gray. I'm trading those in to get a gray. And then I get a discount on the red, so the red isn't even there. So red's covered, gray's covered, and this will be the brown. That will make the shower. So in terms of resource cube spending, we are now done. This is as much as I want to do, so what I'm going to do is place one of the food cubes inside storage here because I want to keep it safe, as the next thing we walk into is discarding resource cubes that are sitting around. So essentially, all 3 of these would be burnt. Now, I do want to mention something. Scavenging comes after discarding cubes. So if you plan to go scavenging, and as I talked about prior, on the decks of cards you saw on the community map, you can go scavenging to locations that are either 1 food, 2 food, or 3 food. And of course, the more food you pay, the safer the journey will be. The less food you have, the danger increases exponentially. So you want to be ready. Now, as of right now, unfortunately, Buzz, who'd be the one I'd want to send out because he's not doing anything productive by defending the base currently, doesn't have any weapons. So sending him out to any of them would probably be a very bad decision. So even though I'm set up perfectly to have a lot of food to go scavenging, I unfortunately won't be doing it, so all this is going to get discarded. But let's say I was going to scavenge. At this discard step, you discard the cubes you don't want to use during scavenging, and then you walk into the scavenging step and you decide, right now I want to go scavenging. I'll spend 2 cubes or maybe even 3 to go to that 3rd tier or 2nd tier deck and go forward from there. But if you decide at that exact moment, you're like, nope, I don't want to go scavenging at all, well, then in that case, it doesn't matter. These are going back to the bag. So at this point, we go ahead and draw the event card, and we already know what it is. Now, sometimes it can be a surprise, but thanks to the watchtower, we know that we have 5 zombies coming from the east. East right here, 4 plus the round number, which is 1, is 5. So 5's coming at us. Do we have the defenses we need? Well, first off, you take a look at the watchtowers. We don't have those defenses. We don't have anything for barricades because I had set Piercy up to be able to handle all this. So you can take characters that didn't go scavenging, hence the reason why I didn't want to go scavenging and even think about it with Piercy, but I could have absolutely sent Piercy scavenging because he had all the weapons. This is why I didn't, because I need him for defense. You go ahead and basically bring him down here and say he is going to defend this side. He's got 1 shield while defending, so he's got that 1 plus the 4 here for his weapons. And it's worth mentioning, when I said that individuals could have multiple weapons, the maximum is 2. So Piercy's loaded out with the best possible with 2 shields for each of the weapons he's carrying, so that's a total of 4. Plus the 1 of the ability, blocks all the Zeds, he kills all of them. If a player successfully defends on all event cards drawn, and in future rounds you'll be drawing multiple events, not good. Right now it's just 1, thankfully. We did defend it, so we get to gain a defensive mark. And also, if a player has no wounds on any of their characters, they also receive a health mark. So now you can see how these tracks, at least 2 of them anyway, tie into our end objective, because as we do really good on the defensive side of the equation, that defense and health track is going to continue to go up. The morale one will be tricky depending on how many characters we have in our base. Now let's talk about a situation where we have 5 Zeds coming from the east and we have absolutely no defense. Let's say, hypothetically, Piercy had no weapons and also didn't even have this ability to gain a shield to the base while defending. So in other words, 0 shields whatsoever. If that was the case and the Zeds were coming at him, if it's 5 or more, that is basically the difference between what you have for defense versus what's coming at you from the Zeds, your characters, all of them at the base, are going to die. Now, if the difference is 1 to 4 between the defensive value and the number of Zeds, then each character in the base gets a wound, and that's how the characters start taking wounds slowly over time if they weren't just outright killed. An even worse situation can occur if a player has no characters at the base and the strength is not sufficient due to the lack of strength from the barricades and the watchtowers. The base is going to be breached. So you need to shade in the base breach tracker, which is this one right here with the negative points we talked about earlier, on the base sheet and lose the number of built facilities on the side of the facility that was attacked. So it's pretty nasty. The difference between the Zeds and how much you have for defenses dictates how many facilities from that side are going to be destroyed. And when they're destroyed, they can never be repaired and brought back. There's an X drawn through them. They are gone. There is an order of operations in terms of what things get destroyed in what order. Defense facilities on the side being attacked are first. Facilities in the middle of the base, those closest to the attack side, player's choice if more than one facility is in the same row or column. And then defense facilities on the sides other than the side attacked by Zeds, again, player's choice. So they will start chewing through the center of your base. And unfortunately, if you're deep into the rounds and you have multiple event cards coming out, you could have potentially multiple breaches happening from all sides, which makes things really crazy. So the nasty piece of the event card is now resolved. We move from 1 down to 2, and that's going to tell us to draw 10 cubes from the resource bag. We now move from the second step to the third step on the card. This one tells us, depending on how many characters that we're controlling, we're going to draw that many resources randomly from the bag. So don't think of this as I'm playing solo, draw 7. Think of this as I'm controlling 2 characters right now, draw 5. That's going to do it for the event card. We're now going to turn our attention to round end. First step of round end is to gain food and herb resource cubes based on how many of those we have actually created. We've got 1 food garden, so we get 1 food. Next up, if we happen to have the radio created, which we do, we get to draw 3 extra random cube resources right now. Now we check if each character has a bathroom, bed, and can be fed. If they do have all 3 of those, you shade in the leftmost box on the morale tracker, as we talked about before. Food resource cubes must be returned to the supply bag when the character is fed, but in this case, nobody has that. So we don't get the mark on the morale track. The next thing we check is if at least one character is missing 2 of the requirements above, whether it be wash, sleep, or food, the player will lose 1 resource cube for each character that is missing 2 or more of the requirements. So I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen right now. So to ensure we avoid losing any resources, I've spent 2 food to feed both characters. That's 1 of the 3 requirements covered. Then 1 of them is going to be able to shower. That's 2 requirements of the 3 covered for 1 of them. And then the other is going to get the bed to sleep in. That's a 2 and a 3 requirement on that character, which means we avoid losing any resources. Next, we remove any wound tokens that are used on the medical rooms. We don't have that in play currently, so we'll skip right past that. We reshuffle the event cards. That includes the one we drew already, goes back inside the deck and shuffled up. Now I'm going to go ahead and shade in that very first round because we're moving to round number 2. The next step is to refresh any characters that were tapped for their abilities, and I actually forgot to tap Piercy when I used his shield to add to the base. Again, I implied it, mentioned it, so we already know what happened, but essentially you turn him 90 degrees sideways, and at this point you turn him back upright again to make sure that you aren't taking advantage of that twice. And that, my friends, is a full round of play from Survive Alive. At this point, you should have a really good understanding of how things go throughout the rounds. Now, normally you'd move the first player marker at this point, but because I'm the first player always when playing solo, nothing to change there. We dive right back into spending resources, and we got a whole bunch more. Over here, it's worth noting, for the first time, we have a wild resource. This is the black resource. Again, that's one that will not show up on any of the character cards when you select them from the beginning. So you'll only find this when you're drawing through the bag, but it can be very helpful to help you be able to build things that you can't otherwise pay for. Right off the bat, I'm going to go ahead and spend a wood as well as a metal in order to build this watchtower down here. Getting the discount of the red off of it is nice. 2 cubes spent, and let's find out what's on the top of the event deck. There's only 1 card being drawn in round 2, which is where we're in right now, but going to the next round, it's going to start going up. It'll be 2 cards going forward. All right, so it looks like this time around they're going to be coming from the west. There's going to be 4 of them plus the round number, which now is 2, so 6 Zeds coming from the west side. So the good news is we had the watchtower from round 1 giving us 2 defense over here, meaning we only need 4. So Piercy could do everything he needs to block up this side. But here's the catch with this stuff. We keep using individuals to try to defend an entire side and not continuing to bump up the barricades as time goes on. That is going to come back to bite us eventually unless we're gathering more characters into the fold, which again, if we get too many characters and we don't have the bed, shower, food situation going on, the morale track won't go up and we're not going to get the points off the end objective card that I want to get. So it's a fun balance all the way through. All right, we're going to go ahead and build 2 things right here. The first one is another shower. So I get the discount of the 1 red off, which means it's just going to be the gray and the brown, which will cover a second shower. And then over here, we're going to do the bed for 1 white. 3 white's going to convert into the brown I need, and the other brown right here. So the good news about that particular move, even though it costs a lot of resources like cloth and metal and wood and all kinds of other things, the fun part is that we do have the morale thing going now because each of our characters has a place to shower, a place to sleep, and I can provide them food for the most part. I have 1 food generated here. I would like to get another one here to guarantee it, but usually when I pull the cubes, I've got things covered with the food coming from the bag, and also the radio helps with the extra 3 that comes through. So we might be okay and start to focus now on trying to get some of the perimeter up, but I don't really have much going on for the wood at this point. And something to correct, I completely forgot to go ahead and actually mark that box in down bottom right, which I did pay for and did take advantage of the ability, just didn't actually mark it on the sheet here. So continuing on, I think I want to give Buzz an upgrade on weapons. So at least if scavenging ever is in the future for one of these 2 individuals, they would be ready for it. I might actually change my mind here and go and build the command center. The main reason being is I want to get that trade ratio down so I can actually start making more effective use of each of the cubes I'm getting instead of burning a 3-to-1, which is pretty nasty. The command center is pretty costly. It's 1 wood and 4 metal. So I'm going to go ahead and use the wild here in order to be another metal, and I've got it covered. And with my final cubes, I can actually go ahead and pull off with a 2-to-1 ratio. I can go ahead and use these 2 right here, I think, in order to convert to a brown cube for wood, and then I'll use 1 food in order to create the food garden. Now, a couple things to mention. When you choose to build the radio or the command center, best to do it at the beginning of the resource spending so that you get that bonus of the trade ratio throughout the entirety of that given round that you built said facility. The other thing I want to mention is the fact that I forgot, but I'll go ahead and retroactively change this right now, about the ability for building a command center costing 1 less metal. So remember I had the black wild cube in there to represent a metal. I didn't need it because I got a discount from Buzz. So I'm going to take that black one back, and I really don't need the food anymore as much because I've got 2 food being produced here. I'd rather have the wild in storage. Finished up discarding resource cubes, and we're not going scavenging this round, so we'll move right into the event card, which we've already taken a look at thanks to the watchtower. We've got Zeds coming at us from the west, as we know. 4 plus the round number is 2, so that's going to be 6 total coming at us from the west. We've got 2 thanks to this watchtower covered. We need 4 more, so we're going to take Piercy here. And of course, Buzz actually being used for the less metal would be turned sideways like this. Doesn't affect anything in terms of defense, though. Piercy's going to go ahead and sit right here. I keep forgetting to turn those things sideways when I use their abilities. It's just to kind of remind you it's been used. Piercy over here is going to go ahead and defend. This is more than enough to defend. So we don't have any issues whatsoever. So we climb up the defense track and the health track as I marked in the next positions. Now I'm going to resolve the rest of the event card, so the next thing we do is draw 10 cubes from the bag. I've drawn the 10 resources as well. For the 3rd line, gone ahead and drawn 5, and now we get to the 4th line in this particular card, which tells us if we have a command center, we get to take the top character card from the deck, and we're going to immediately choose 4 resource cubes shown on the character card. So we're going to flip it over. We got Rick the Medic, and this gives us the opportunity to pick specific resources based on what he has available here. From Rick's card of available resources, I've chosen to take 3 of the wood and 1 metal. Now I have the opportunity, if I wish, to have Rick join the base with the other 2 characters, and it's really tough because I want this character. He has a great ability that he can remove a wound, but I think I actually might hold off, even though I'm going to be able to specifically build the things I need to keep morale up, like a shower and a bed, to make sure that Rick is on the right track. The thing that I'm worried about is that once I take Rick, I'm going to start losing the resource cube boost that I get when I have 2 characters or 1 character. So I think I'm going to go 1 more round so I get as much in terms of resources going into the next round as possible, and maybe at that point in time start getting up to 3 characters. And as I chose not to take Rick, he goes to the bottom of the character deck. We now move to end of round, and food is going to be produced at every food garden, so we have 2 of those. We don't currently have any herb gardens created, so nothing there. That's the one to the right of the food gardens. Next, we're going to go ahead and check for morale, and we finally have everything we need to keep everybody happy. We have a shower, we have a bed, and I can consume 1 food each, even right from the food garden, or I could take it from my pool if I wanted to. And that's going to allow me to make sure I can move on the morale track, because all my characters have all 3 requirements taken care of. So we get to mark the morale marker on the furthest left side for the first position, which is, again, tying back to that end objective. Now you can see, though, we need to get to the 4th box on defense, health, and morale tracks, and defense and health are already on their way towards 4, whereas morale is going to take a little bit longer to get there. At this point, wound tokens on medical rooms are going to come off. We don't have any right now. We'll talk more about those later on once we build one. And then we're going to reshuffle the event cards. I've done this already, so the one we just resolved went back to the deck. Now we're going to shade out the round we just completed. So as you can see, going into round number 3, we're going to be drawing 2 event cards, and things are going to progressively get tougher as we go along. Any exhausted characters that use their abilities will be refreshed at this point. That completes round end, but I did forget one thing, and we definitely don't want to miss this. I have the radio, and we didn't take the 3 extra resource cubes for it. That would have happened at the same time as we produced food in our base. So we'll go ahead right now and grab 3 cubes. Doesn't make any gameplay impact, but we certainly would have missed out. So let's go ahead and grab those. We got ourselves a food, a metal, and a wood. And now it's time to spend some resources. The main focus I have for this round is to get some defenses up, as well as to start creating another bed, another shower, to ensure we can have another character added into the fray for the next round. As things begin to uptick on the event cards, we're going to need more of these characters to help defend the base. Let's go ahead and build a watchtower in the top right-hand corner. It's going to cost 2 wood, 1 metal, and we get the discount, as we always know, for the brick. Now we know we'll be pulling 2 event cards during this round. The Watchtower allows us to take a look at all event cards that are being drawn this round to give us a great heads up as to what's coming. So the first one that's going to come at us is going to be from the east, and it's going to be 4 plus the round number, which is 3. So that's 7 Zeds coming from the east. The second card off the top of the stack is a south attack from the Zeds. This one also 7. So our base currently has 4 defense here on the east side and 2 defense on the south side. We're going to have to work to see what we want to build in order to try to bring up our defenses or potentially use characters to fill that void. I'm going to choose to build the bed and the bath. So again, we get the discount of the 1 brick off the cost. So it's just going to be the metal and the wood needed for the bath. So we got that situated for the third one. And then the third bed, we've got the resources for that as well. Now I'm going to be a bit risky here and not create another food garden. That would guarantee that we have the 3 food we need when we get another character down the line here. I'm going to hope that when we draw cubes from the bag, it's going to allow us to get the ones that we need when we need it, especially being that we have the command center. We should be able to get food in most cases with most characters. So I'm going to hold off on building another garden, and now we're going to focus really on trying to use these cubes to actually build up some barricades. Now, I was thinking about going scavenging this turn potentially, but as I look at it, I really do need to focus on kind of upticking my defense of not only my characters, but also getting some things built around barricades, because eventually that's going to come back to haunt me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these 2 resources right here in order to build the forge. You'll see that I get the red brick discount as I normally do from the workshop above. So it's just going to cost 2 resources to build this. And the great thing about this forge is it's going to reduce the cost of forging weapons by any 1 resource. So let's have Buzz go ahead and create an axe. So we're going to use these 2 right here for 1 wood. We're going to use this wild for a wood, and that's all we need. We normally would need a metal, but thanks to the forge, things are cheaper. So Buzz now has an axe. Now we'll go ahead and craft a knife, and again, using the forge discount, meaning I can pick any resource from the knife I don't want to have to spend. So I've got 1 wood and 2 metal. So we'll just go ahead and do a metal, and we'll make this wood, and that is good enough. So now at this point, both characters have 4 defense, and Piercy has that cool ability to add a shield to the base when defending. Now, my understanding of that ability is that when he's defending, you can add a shield to the base on any side you want. I've always used it on the side that he is, but I believe you can actually choose where that goes, as that's how the ability seems to be written. So we're going with that. Now, based on Piercy and Buzz here, I've got enough, I think, defensively. So I got 4 with Buzz, and over here we've already got 4. We need 3 more to cover this side. So technically Buzz by himself could keep that side safe. Piercy here is bringing in 5. If I use all of what he has on top of the 2 that's already here, that would actually cover the south, and we wouldn't need anything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the other resources I have to maybe build up barricades and start working on putting maybe 1 in different sides of the base just to kind of get ready for the future. So I've crafted some barricades. I picked one north, one for the west, and one for the south. And we went ahead and saved the wild cube, which is nice to have. No need to discard any resources, so we move right on to scavenging, and I've chosen not to scavenge. Now, if we don't end up being able to scavenge, or I just decide not to risk it and have anyone go scavenging during this play, I will certainly show you how it resolves towards the end of the video once we're done our play. But I'm going to keep on trying to see if I can pull that off, but I also don't want to have my base get invaded and lose points while I'm trying to gain points through scavenging. It's kind of a wonderful trade-off of when you think it's safe to do so. So in this particular case, we're going to go ahead and draw event cards. As we draw the event cards, we're going to place individuals to do some defending. We know what these event cards are because we have that watchtower. First one is an attack from the east. It's going to be a total of 7 Zeds. So Buzz is going to defend on that side. He has 4. The watchtowers on the side have 4. We have 8, which is more than enough to defend the Zeds there. And then we're going to draw the next one, which we know is a southern attack of the Zeds. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to place Piercy down here. And he's going to give 5, including his 1 from the ability he has in the bottom here, to defend down here on top of the 2 we have, plus the 1, which is way more than enough. We've defended from all Zeds. So on the defense and health side of the equation, we are now 1 position away from the 4th box, which is pretty awesome. So once we get that, we've got 2 of the 3 requirements on this end objective. Now, an important note is when you start resolving multiple event cards, you have to know which event card is the last pulled, because that's the one you're going to reference in terms of what cubes you're going to get. So the southern one was the second one off the deck. That's going to be the one we reference in terms of what we get. So we got 10 cubes here randomly pulled, and then based on having 2 characters still, we have 4 cubes right here. And that's good news because we got lucky. We have the command center row at the bottom, whereas the other one did not. And that's going to work out for us. So we're going to go ahead and draw the top character card. And again, we get to pick 4 resources from this card and then decide if we want to keep this character. This is Delia, the chef, and she provides an ability that says you can use 1 herb for feeding once per round. So that actually would be beneficial. I mean, I do have a wild in my pool of resources here. You'll notice I don't have any food in there, so the only food that's going to get generated that's legitimately a food is going to come from my food gardens. I do have a wild that could pay for her food to ensure that when she comes in, plus everything else I have here, my morale would be okay. But the question really is, do I like this ability overall in the long run? And I really don't, to be completely honest, based on what I've got set up here. So what I might do is actually just take the resources that are per her character card, which I can do right now, thanks to having the command center. So I'm going to grab these, which will help me build some barricades or other things that are useful. I'm going to choose to actually not take her, and hopefully I won't regret that. At this point, food gets created in my food garden, which is great. Got 2 of those. We also get 3 extra for having a radio. So I'm just going to go through the bag here, randomly pull 3 out. Here we go. What do we get? We got ourselves a, that's actually not bad. Both of my characters are able to be fed using the food from the garden, so these 2 will go away. We're also going to have a place for them to sleep as well as to shower, so we're going to have a bump on the morale track. So we're all good there. We're going to go ahead and reshuffle the event cards back into the deck, and then we're going to cross out the round we just completed. We've reset everything over here as well, so all our characters are back upright again. We got our resources organized over here. I've crossed out the round we just went through. We're going into the 4th round. There will be 2 events in this round pulled. Then we go into the 5th round for 3 events and 6th round for 4 events. We'll start things off in round 4, building the final watchtower. I could wait for the 5th or 6th round to do that watchtower, but I do want to do this now to take a look and see where I should build barricades. It's going to be a major focus this round for me, is to get things built up. So we want to see where the Zeds are coming so I can focus my attention on other areas. We only have 2 characters currently, hoping to pick up a 3rd sometime in this round. So 2 wood right here. That's going to cover this 2, and then we got the brick already covered from this area up here, giving us the discount. So the metal is going to come from trading in these 2. So that watchtower provides us with 2 defense, and being able to take a look at the events coming for this round. We're going to look at the first one here, telling us that we're going to have Zeds coming from the west side, 5 plus the round number, which is now 4, so 9 are coming from this side. We currently have 1, 2, thanks to new watchtower, 3, 4, and we have 1 barricade, which is 5 already over here. We need 4 more. So we could put Buzz on that side, and if we did so, he would give the 4 with his weapons to be able to cover this side, so that's good news. Let's take a look at the next event and see where it would go. It's going to be the west side again, and the good news is when you place an individual to defend on one side, if another event comes out on the same side, that same individual can contribute to defending that side as well. And this time around, it would be for 4 plus the round number, which is 4, so 8 coming at us over here. But we know we still have to get up to 9 in terms of defense to make sure we can actually cover both of these cards. So that's pretty good news, because it means all the attacks are going to be from this side. We can cover it with Buzz, leaving Piercy open to do other things, and we could potentially focus on building up barricades elsewhere. The really good news is we now know that the second card off the top of the deck is going to be the one that's going to provide us later on resources, as well as the opportunity to get another character. And you can see if this card had been the last one to get pulled, that would have stopped us from gaining that additional character. So we have potential to pick up a third person. But that's all going to be coming in the future. Let's focus on building some barricades. We're going to end up building 7 barricades. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm going to trade these 2 in for another wood. So that's 7 wood right here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, plus 1, which is wild, for another metal. That's 6 right there, and then trade this in for 7 metal. So we have enough to build 7 total barricades. So all of these resources are going to get spent. Let's pick where we want to place them. All right, so I decided to place barricades all over the place. I've got 3 of them built right here. We added 1 here, 1 over here, and 2 over here, trying to even things out overall, so we're kind of keeping ourselves relatively safe on all angles. Again, I didn't have to place any more here. I'm actually kind of debating whether I want to actually take 2 away from here because we really don't need them at this point in time, maybe spread them elsewhere. So maybe what I'll do is I'll actually take 2 away from here. We'll put 1 here and 1 here. Now at this point, we're down to just 2 resources. I'm going to go ahead and store the wild one, and this one's going to get tossed as I don't need it for anything, so it goes and gets discarded. Now we could go ahead and scavenge here. I could have actually used this wild in order to use for 1 food, but as I'm going to show you on the table on the community map, there is actually a couple cards that have 8 Zeds or 1 card that has 7 Zeds, and based on my individuals going out into the wild and trying to scavenge, that can be kind of scary because, well, they could get beat up pretty good. So I don't know if I want to send in my characters out to their demise with such a small amount of food. I'd rather than kind of go scavenging maybe with more food. I just didn't get what I needed during this turn. I could have converted, as I've done with the barricades, to get more food, but I really wanted to focus on getting those up because I've been behind on the curve on actually focusing on the barricades, which I think are going to be huge when we get to higher event card levels. So while I won't be scavenging during this round, you can see a little nice chart breakdown for each of the different food levels that you're using. So if you use 1 food, there is 2 8 Zeds in there and 1 7 Zed, whereas you go 2 food, it starts to become a little easier to get through, and 3 food, really easy to get through. So you really want to try to bump yourself up to those higher levels of food when you're going out scavenging. And you might be wondering, well, if you send 1 character out there, how would they ever have a chance with just a single food? And that's kind of part of the problem. You'd actually have to send both out. So for instance, if I sent Piercy and Buzz out, they both have weapons with 4 each. And of course, Piercy's ability that gives an extra shield when defending the base doesn't apply. So that would be 8. And you can see that's where you could actually send both of them to go out and scavenge and actually have a chance to get through there cleanly. But as of right now, I need to have Buzz back at the base or Piercy back at the base to do some defending. So because of this, it's not really the best time to pull it off. First event off the top, we already know what it is. 5 plus 4 is going to be 9 coming from the west. We currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to go ahead and place Buzz with his 4, and that's going to allow us to defend that side without issue. And then we go to the second one, which we know will be the same thing, but actually less Zeds, and we have everything we need to defend against that as well. So our defense as well as our health has gone up to the 4th box on the track, which means we've got 2 of the 3 objectives we need on this in order to get the points. So we just need to get our morale up. We now replenish our resource queues. We get 10, which I've pulled out right here. We're going to grab an additional 5 from the bag because we have 2 characters currently. So we're going to get ourselves these 4 right here, and 1 more from the bag is another food. We got lots of food this time around. And then down here, we get to pull a character card, pull 4 resources off it, and choose if we want to keep this individual. And I pulled in the resources for this individual I'd like to keep, which is going to be 3 wood, 1 metal. I'm keeping the characters, so we now have 3 characters. Food and Herb Garden's going to produce this point in the end of round, and so we've got those produced there. We're going to grab 3 random ones from the bag for the radio that we have. We've got 3 in hand. We got another food. We got some wood, and we have some of the herbs. Now we check for morale conditions, like being able to feed each of the 3 characters we have each of them have a bed, and each of them have the ability to shower. We do for all of them. So we'll go ahead and consume 2 food plus 1 food to cover each individual. And then they all have their own bed, all have their own shower. So we're good there. Morale's going up. We've now made it to the 5th round. At this point, we're drawing 3 events going forward with no ability to know what they are. Bruce, the truck driver, comes in with a really cool ability to draw an extra resource per round. So we're going to go ahead and tap Bruce. Again, I can still use him for defense. I just can't use his ability again to draw 1 additional resource from the bag. Here's hoping it's a wild, but highly unlikely. We got ourselves a no. It's not a wild at all. Bruce has also been added to the very bottom of the row of characters and doesn't have any weapons currently, so not very useful on the defending side of things. Maybe something to think about, but we also have the ability to start building up some more barricades, which is probably what I'm going to be doing because at this point I'm now terrified not knowing where these Zeds are going to come from. We're going to build some weapons for Bruce to make him a little more functional on defense. We're going to use the forge to get the discount on the materials to build him an axe and a knife to get him up to 4 defense. So we can just use 2 metal and 2 wood, and that is enough to be able to pull off both of those. So you can see, bang for buck, that was pretty great. The forge allows me to build those 2 weapons at a much discounted rate instead of building more barricades that only give me 1 for every pairing of the 2 there. I would have only been able to build 2 barricades for 2 shields on one side, whereas I gave Bruce the ability to be dynamic anywhere in play in terms of defense, but he has 4 defense. Now at this point, we're going to keep on with the plan of building up the barricades to try to keep our base secure. So we're going to go ahead and spend a number of things here. So 4 right now, and 4 will allow us to build 4 barricades. Then we can do another barricade with trading for these ones. We can do another barricade with trading for these ones. So overall, pretty good. 6 barricades built. We put 3 over here, 1 here, 1 there, and 1 here. So now across all sides, we have a total of 4 on each side, plus the 4 from each of the watchtowers. So we're looking at 8 defense on all sides, not including the characters we have. And technically, we still have 1 that was stored away as a wild, which I should have brought over here, but we could go ahead right now if I want to choose not to go scavenging again, which I actually might because I want to stay alive and keep my base safe. So maybe I'll go ahead and actually create 1 more barricade. And we'll go ahead and place it on this side of the map. So at this point, we're not going to pull our event cards and see what kind of pain is coming our way. The first one off the top is going to be 5 plus the round number, which is currently 5, coming from the north, so 10. So we'll add to the 8 we already have up there. With an individual with 4 defense, that's 12. More than enough to defend that side. Let's go ahead and draw up the next event card. It is going to be... This one's coming from the west this time. It's going to be 4 plus 5, so it's 9 coming from this side. We'll go ahead and put Bruce on this side to keep things in check. And we'll go to the third and final card, and it's going to be from the west. Once again, it's 5 plus 5, so it's 10 coming from this side. And Bruce will be able to, with everything that's already here on this side, defend against that. So Piercy ends up not being used. So you can see I could have tried to push somebody out to go scavenge and maybe not put as many into the barricades. And that's the fun thing in terms of min-maxing when you should defend versus when you should go after more points by going scavenging. And I'm being careful. You may not want to be. You might want to push your luck and go scavenging more often, but I am focused more so on keeping the base contained. All right, another successful defense as well as nobody getting injured means 2 more marks up the track, which is increasing how many points we get towards the end, which is awesome. Now this time around, the event card that ended up being the last one's not going to be as generous to us. We're going to get ourselves 11 resources from the bag, but we get absolutely nothing as a bonus because we now have 3 characters. We now gain food like we normally do, so 2 food produced on the gardens. We're also going to take 3 random ones in the bag thanks to the radio. So we got ourselves another food, we got some brick, and a wild. Over here on the morale side of the equation, we're doing great. We have everything we need to bump ourselves up to the 4th position on the track, which means we have actually completed the end objective, and we'll be able to take the points when we get to scoring. And just like that, we're heading into our final round of play. All the cards for characters have been refreshed, organized all the resources. We're ready to go. Which also includes shuffling the event deck, which now going into this 6th round is going to be quite wild, as we're going to have 4 cards coming from it. We're going to go ahead and tap Bruce one more time here for drawing of an extra resource, because can't hurt to have that. Wish I'd have got him a lot earlier, but that's pretty good. We got ourselves some wood. One correction to make, I got a little excited and did not consume the food I needed to in order to get that morale mark that I did. So we're going to consume all 3 of the food we have here to make sure that morale bump was justified. Now here's what's kind of fun about the final round. Now we're going to be pulling 4 cards, so we're going to have attacks that are going to occur and potentially might even have a duplicate attack against the same side. So we might want to actually try and go scavenging and just see if we can actually pull it off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to risk it. I'm going to go ahead and keep 1 food here and 2 wilds to make the other food I need to go scavenging at the best level possible. So I only have to take 1 character knowing things should be safe and good. So we're going to keep that aside. We'll use the rest here in order to try to build some barricades. Now you can see here I'm kind of hurting for stuff. We're going to go ahead and try our best here to get 4 of them created with these 4 right here. And then for this side of the equation, we really can't do too much. Now, for those that are interested in what the medical room provides, which are these ones along the bottom here, and there's actually one that goes a little north as well, these reduce the cost to remove a wound from a character by 1, making it cheaper to do so. The wound marker gets placed on the medical room when it's used to indicate you can't use it again this round. So the more of them you have, the more opportunity you have to heal up your characters, which I haven't had to do because I've done a pretty good job of getting my characters the types of equipment they need to keep the defenses up. But if you are being a lot more aggressive on the scavenging side of the equation, which as you get more experience, opponent, you will definitely want to do, because that earns you more points than you'd otherwise get. Then you're going to run into situations where individuals might come back wounded, and you're going to need those individual locations to help heal. That's going to do it for spending resources. Quite happy with that. We're going to stop right there. Next, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose to scavenge. That's right. I'm going to risk it. Whether this is a good idea or not, I want to show you guys how this actually pans out. And this could be a horrible time to try it, but it could be fun. So I'm choosing Bruce to go scavenging. And as I mentioned before, you can have up to 2 characters go scavenging if you wish. So I know I want to go scavenging. First, I discard all the resource cubes I'm not going to be using, so I have 3 of them to discard. I'm going to keep 1 in storage just for fun, and then we're going to go ahead, and it won't be just for fun later on. You'll see how that actually makes sense later on. There's actually points tied to that when it gets to the end of the game, but we're going to go scavenging now with Bruce. So I have to select a location that has 3 food, because that's how much I'm spending. I'm using some wilds to be able to pull that off as well. We're going to go construction site right here. So the combined weapon strength for this character, Bruce, which is 4, is higher than the number of Zeds. Then we've taken the Zeds out. In this case, it's 2, so we're good to go. We've taken the Zeds out, and we gain the benefits. So based on being successful with the scavenge and being able to defend against the Zeds coming at us, we get a tick mark, which is going to go on the scavenge row right here. So 0 will get shaded in. Then we're going to get 2 IP for influence points. We'll mark that down below. Now in solo mode, the location that's listed on the bottom of the card is going to be eliminated from the map. So we're going to remove the police station. And it's also worth mentioning, you're going to X off the area that you've actually scavenged. So I scavenged the construction site. I can't scavenge it again in the future. The police station is actually in an area that is off the map for solo play. So in this case, nothing happens. Now, as a reminder of the individual or individuals you sent scavenging, always a good idea to place them up here on the community map, because you're not going to be able to use them for defense. And now we head into resolving the event cards, and we're going to have no idea what is coming off the top of this deck. We got 4 cards to go through, and being that it is the 6th round, once we're done resolving the top section of each of these event cards, in other words, the Zeds coming at us, that is where the game is going to end. So let's see how we do and whether we have any breaches at the end here. So the first one off the top is going to be South. We're going to have Zeds coming in 5 plus the round, which is 6, so at 11 strength. So adding Buzz to this southern location, he has 4, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 across the watchtower, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 with the barricades. So a total of 13 defense there, easily able to handle the Zeds coming from the south. Hopefully we get more south ones, because I've only got 2 characters to help me with defense. This could be tricky. Oh, we got lucky. It's another south one, so 4 plus the round. That's 6, that's 10. We're good. Buzz is doing good work in the south. Let's see if we can keep going with that. Next one up is going to be an east attack. So we're going to have attack on this side. We'll put Piercy over here to hopefully help out with that. It's going to be well more than enough with his ability to use a shield while defending. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and he's got a total of 5. So that is a ton more than what we need, but we're pulling one more card. Let's see where it lands. This is where the trouble could be, and it ends up being west. And the good news is I had 1 extra one here than I did anywhere else, mainly because I was trying to protect things on this side of the game board, being that, as I talked about earlier in the game, when things start to go south, it starts to breach through and destroy things that you built. So I put more defenses on this side. I currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Pretty good. Very close to almost being able to handle all the Zeds, but 1 difference-wise got through. Now I'll have to double check this with the creator to ensure I can even do this, but potentially, maybe I'd be allowed to tap Piercy, seeing as he hasn't been tapped yet, to add a shield to the base when defending, and while he's defending this side, that shield could actually affect another side, giving me the shield I need over here to keep any breach from happening. But let's say hypothetically we can't do that. If that happens and we have that 1 difference, what happens? It'll always go back to the deficit in terms of how much of a difference there is between the defense and the number of Zeds. So in this case, 1 to 4 has 1 wound going on every character in the base. So Bruce would not take a wound because Bruce had gone out to scavenge, and thankfully because Bruce ran away, he not only did not help with defense, he doesn't get any wounds and doesn't have to suffer any consequences for the Zed getting through. Everybody loves Bruce right now. Now if the deficit was 5 plus, then the characters in the base would die. Now, just moments ago, I used the term breached, and breach is actually defined in Survive Alive specifically. What happened here wasn't actually a breach. It was a Zed overcoming my defenses and wounding my characters because the difference was between 1 and 4. Again, if it's 5 or higher, the characters all die because the Zed gets in and just munches them all to pieces. And that difference in how many get through just overwhelms the characters. But an actual breach occurs if you have no characters at the base, and then there's a difference between the actual defense value and the number of Zeds in a bad way. That's when a breach actually occurs. That's when you start tracking that breach on this track right here and losing points. That, of course, is obviously going to trickle into losing facilities based on the side the Zeds have come in at. So if you have nobody guarding the base, you are going to start seeing your facilities getting crossed out, X'd out, and you cannot rebuild them once they've been blown away. And there is a hierarchy in terms of how you go through that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. So what do we end up losing out on in this final round? Well, we normally would come over here to the defense row and we go to the health row and we would say, yay, we get to go ahead and get some more things on the track because we defended so well. But in this case, we didn't. We didn't defend on all event cards. So we do not get to defend on this one. And health-wise, well, we all took a wound because of that non-defend. So we don't get to bump up on that track either. I survived through 6 rounds of play. Now let's go to final scoring and see how I did. We'll now start tracking our points across the rows into a column that will lead us down to the total. And it's worth mentioning, based on what we had shaded in, the value that will end up in the far right position will be whatever the leftmost value that is exposed is. So in this case, the starting one here is characters. How many characters were left alive at the end of the play? We had 3, so we're going to go ahead and fill in 3 spaces. So the total is 9 points for the characters. Going on to the next one is base breaches. We didn't have any base breaches, so a 0. And we continue to work our way all the way down the column. Defense was 12. Health was 15 points. For scavenging, we got 3 points. For IP or influence points, we got 2. So actually that scavenge that we pulled off at the end gave us a net of 5 extra points. See, scavenging is very much worthwhile at the final end scoring. So if you want to push for more of that later on, when you play through yourself throughout the rounds, you can definitely do so. It's, again, much of a risk-reward scenario. And then we got the morale track, which we did quite well in. We got 4 across that one, so 16. Resources-wise, we had 1 resource that we stored, so that actually counts. Of course, if I had created more storage, I could have kept more resources at the end. Each resource you have adds a point in there. And then this ABC is referring to which objective. Our objective was a C, so you just mark C, and it's 5 points. Because we completed this, we had the 4th box on defense, health, and morale. We're good to go on all those. My total was 63 points, which tells me a seasoned Zed Slayer is what I am. The best, you rule the base, and people want to be a part of your community. That's going to conclude the gameplay for Survive Alive. Really hope this helps you make an informed decision based on what you saw. This was the core solo mode inside the game. There is going to be solo-specific scenarios, and I'm going to show you 2 of them right now. Now, beyond what you just saw right now, if you're a solo player and you're looking for more of a narrative story that ties into the objectives you're trying to complete as you play through the game, these solo scenarios are going to be for you, and there's talk of other ones being developed as well. Each of the missions will be uniquely set up, as you can see here, and have their own game end conditions and game conditions to follow throughout gameplay. These solo scenarios also provide multiple endings as well, so not only will your decisions in going through them change, and you'll see certain narrative text that you'll see in one play and not another, but also the ending can be different. That's going to wrap up a high-level look at the 2 additional solo scenarios, which again, I think are a huge plus for solo players out there interested in Survive Alive. And that, my friends, wraps up the game overview and gameplay video for Survive Alive. I really hope this video was helpful in helping you make a decision on this one. If you want to find the campaign page and more information, I've got a link in the pinned comment and video description as well as in the top right-hand corner right now. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of what you saw. And as always, keep on rolling solo.